Welcome to Real Talk, where we dive into the raw, engaging, authentic, and lived experiences that inspire and inform. I'm Michelle Badusky, your host, and I believe that the hardest conversations to have are the ones we need the most. This is a safe space for real talk that challenges perspective, sparks growth, and pushes boundaries. No filters, no fluff, just real talk. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hey everyone, it is Michelle Badusky here, and I am super excited to be here with you today, more than you could ever know, because today, the day I am releasing this video is October 19th, 2025, and that is exactly 25 years after the day I woke up in the Thompson General Hospital after a really interesting week of drug-induced amnesia. I don't know. It was my last bender. And when I woke up in the hospital on October 19th, 2000, it was the last time I woke up from a drug-induced haste in my life. It's been 25 years that I have been clean from opioids and narcotics. And yes, I still use that terminology when I talk about my own battle with drug addiction. I don't use the word sober because, as many of you know who follow me, I do love a glass of wine, but I do not use narcotics or opioids and haven't for 25 years. Now, the reason I'm sharing this today is because I want to talk about something that has been talked about a lot in the press. And actually, I stayed up late on Thursday night to watch the live stream of the committee meeting where community members came and spoke either in favor or against Bill 48 in the Manitoba legislature. Now, this is the bill that's been proposed by the NDP government that is talking about the 72-hour detox hold. And it's been very controversial, and we've heard a lot of people speak for and against. And I find it really interesting as I was watching because I have a very different perspective. Now, this is what I'm sharing my opinion, and it is just that, my opinion, but it is qualified by 25 years of working not just with myself to keep myself free of addiction, but as someone who's worked with many, many other families and addicts who have tried and successfully recovered from their addiction, and some who haven't. And I have a long history with addiction. I started using drugs when I was 10 years old, and in October 19th, 2000, when I woke up clean for the first time in a really long time, and the last time, I was 26. So a 16-year battle with drugs throughout my youth. And as you can imagine, that played a huge toll on the coping mechanisms and the issues that I had going on in my mind. And what we discovered in the years following me getting clean is that my drug use was actually self-medicating and hiding some mental illnesses that I didn't even know I had. And I think that's really important to understand when we talk about Bill 48, is that we're talking about human beings. We're talking about addicts that are struggling, not just with addiction, but with underlying issues. And some of them may not even know it. Now, all of that aside, people have asked me, are you for or against Bill 48, a 72-hour hold if an addict is detoxing in a drug-induced psychosis and they are deemed a danger to themselves or others? What do I think about that? I am 100% for it. And let me tell you why. When you are detoxing from a drug, you are not in your right state of mind. Now, the drugs I used, my drugs of preference, my drug of choice was cocaine to bring me up and keep me functional and get me high, and opioids, preferably oxy, prescription, non-prescription oxy, to bring me down and kind of keep me going. And I went back and forth between the two of them for years until I just couldn't manage anymore. Now, when I detoxed, I actually had to be locked up in a psych ward I was locked up in, and it was, 2000, it was 25 years ago. It was a room that had padded walls and a window in the door, and I just sat on a mattress, and I remember the hallucinations. I remember wanting to just literally crawl out of my skin, and it was one of the worst experiences of my life. And I was there. I didn't sign myself in willingly, and I was kept there until I was no longer a danger to myself, because I would have killed myself. I absolutely would have. I was brought in because I had tried. And when I woke up from that haze, yes, they had managed to, bandage my wounds and stop the bleeding, but I still wanted to die. And as I started to detox, as the drugs came out of my system, I wanted it more and more, and I was a danger to myself. I don't know how long I was there. I don't know if it was 24 hours. I don't know if it was 72. All I know is that if they'd left it up to me, if they would have let me walk out of there, I'd be dead today. My 6-year-old son wouldn't have had mother, and my other 3 children would never have been born. I would never have been able to pull my life together. All the things I've accomplished in the last 25 years, my incredible family, the work I've done in the community, the money I've raised for charity, my education, all of the things my family has accomplished would never have happened if I would have been allowed to walk out of there when I was still under the influence of the drugs. I needed that time. Now that's a mental health hold, and right now we still have that. This 72-hour hold is being applied differently. Right now it is kind of expanding the 24-hour hold that we've been using for decades for the drunk tank, right? If you're publicly intoxicated, you can be picked up, put in a cell, held for 24 hours until you sober up. This is basically the same thing, except it's allowing for a longer period of time, because the drugs that we're seeing today, I couldn't even imagine. I got clean 25 years ago. If I was an active addict, if I was actively using today, I'd be dead. I know that. These drugs are no joke, and they change the way your brain works. And that's if you've got a healthy brain to begin with. If you were someone like me that was dealing with years and years of abuse and the lack of coping skills, the lack of ability to process information like I did, because I had started using so young to deal with the severe sexual abuse that I was dealing with as a young child, that I couldn't function normally. So leaving it up to me would have killed me. And these drugs today are even worse. Now, I listened to the people that were talking, and I listened to the people that were for this 72-hour hold, and I listened to the people that were against it. And I understand where they're coming from, and I say this with all the respect and the compassion, that there's more here than those issues that were brought up. There's more than the location, and all of the people that are listening that live in Point Douglas, I get it. I get the frustration. I heard it in your voices. It's really easy to dismiss you as NIMBY, not in my backyard. But your neighborhood and your community has been through a lot for a long time, and it's not getting any better. And I wish that there was a perfect location for a center like this. I wish there was a perfect location for the safe consumption site that we need. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I wish there was a better location. But right now, your neighborhood is the one that has the biggest impact of this drug crisis. It has been maybe unfairly, maybe disproportionately impacted. But it is where the people are. And we need to have services where the people are. I heard people say, well, take them out of the city, transport them. They need to be in a place where when they get out, there's no drugs, where there's rehab. I get that idea too. I heard the people say that this detox center, 72 hours is not long enough. There's no beds for them if they want to go into rehab. There's no beds, no service. I get that. But I think this is the point that a lot of the people that we're talking about were missing. This isn't rehab. This is detox. Detox and rehab are two very, very different things. You cannot force anyone into rehab. I would never advocate for it, and I will never advocate for it because it will not work. I have seen it so many times where, we've had people that have been forced into Addictions Foundation or a rehab center from the courts. Unless and until you are ready to fight the demons that keep you addicted, rehab will not work. Forced rehab will not work. And that's not what this is. And I think people keep mixing up the things. They keep saying, well, this 72-hour detox isn't good unless there's beds for them to go into rehab. That's not what this is. The 72-hour hold is just an extension of the 24-hour hold that we already have. And this place is just a safer place than an emergency room or a jail cell. Because we've seen this happen, right? We have seen the police hold someone in a cell, the drunk tank, where they weren't properly prepared or supervised for the detox. They weren't properly aware of the medical needs of detoxing from severe drugs and alcohol. And people get hurt. And we see what happens in the emergency rooms when the police pick someone up who's intoxicated and the only place they have to bring them for medical supervision is an emergency room. Now we're tying up an emergency room, we're tying up a bed, and we're tying up a police officer or a paramedic because they need to stay there and wait while this person gets medically cleared. So now we are overburdening the emergency rooms and our law enforcement with someone who we know just needs medical detox. So a separate center that is staffed and facilitating that detox with security and supervision and a long enough period so that not only do the drugs get out of their system, any underlying psychosis that is happening can be assessed. That's the point of this. It is not a point of keeping someone, sobering them up long enough for them to move them into a rehab. That's not what this is. I wish it was, but we're not there yet. Because that's the problem with Bill 48, is it's a step in the right direction, but it's not the solution. It is one piece of a much larger puzzle. Do we need safe consumption sites? I was listening to the representative from the Rainbow Resource. Fabulous presentation. If you are watching this, you did an incredible job and you proved how badly we need safe consumption sites in this province, in Brandon, in Winnipeg, and I will support that. And I think that, again, this is not that. I wish it was. We tried it, right? And that's where the frustration must be coming from, is that the people that stood up and said, we don't need this. We need safe consumption sites. We need longer periods. We need more beds. We need more rehab. Absolutely. That is what we need. And those are the other steps. But this 72-hour detox is the first step. And if we keep waiting until we have everything in place, if we keep waiting for perfection, we're never going to do anything. And that's what brings me to the people who are up there saying, no, we do not want this. We haven't been consulted enough. There hasn't been enough details released. We want to know how it's going to operate. We want to know all the facility details. We want to know details. We want consultations. If we continue to do that, nothing's going to happen. And that's the problem here. Is that for years here in Manitoba, we have been berating the governments, both the PC and the NDP, that they're not doing enough, that they're not doing anything, that we need solutions. And here is a solution. The first attempt was a safe consumption site, and that was shot down. It became too politically heavy right now. And so this is the second idea. It's like, let's do it. Let's do something. This is going to free up ER space. This is going to free up law enforcement. This is going to make the streets safer because the people that are going through detox psychosis from drugs, when they are a danger to themselves and when they are a danger to others, they are going to be taken off the street and held somewhere where they cannot hurt themselves or others. They're not being forced to stop using drugs. They're not being forced into rehab. They're not being incarcerated. They're being protected against not only what they could do to themselves, but what they could do to others. Because when you are in that state of mind, you are not thinking like a rational human being. And I couldn't imagine what my life would be like if I was left to my own devices at that time in my life when I could have possibly hurt somebody. It would be one thing to have taken my own life and left my son without a mother. But what if I got into my car? What if I don't know, thought my neighbor was holding drugs and I needed them? What if I hurt her or killed someone's child? Bill 48 is not perfect. It is a step. It is a solution to one small problem that is going to help. It's not going to cure, but it is like taking a Tylenol when you have a headache. It's going to relieve a symptom, not necessarily the root cause. If we continue to throw up barriers to every solution presented, we are never going to get anywhere. Is it perfect? No. Are there going to be challenges to run, staff, and operate it? Absolutely. But we can't have those details worked out until the regulation is in place allowing it to happen. That's not how things work. And I don't care what government you are. I don't care what party you are. I don't care what business you run. You do not have every single detail fleshed out of how you are going to operate something unless you know it's even possible to do it. Because no one's going to do that. It's not even feasible. So everyone's saying we need all of the details and we need it, wrapped up in a perfect bow. That's never going to happen. And if we continue to demand perfection, we will get nowhere. Bill 48 is a step in the right direction. It's supported by the medical profession. It's supported by law enforcement, and we saw it's supported by the paramedics. It's supported by addicts. Not all of us. I don't speak for every recovering addict out there. I speak for me. But some of us have some really great insights onto what that looks like. Do we need more rehab beds? Yes. Do we need more doctors and more nurses and better staffed emergency rooms? Yes. But we also have to protect them. Because our medical staff in our ERs are already overburdened, they're overstressed. And when you are trying to deal with someone, let's say like me, who's dealing with cancer, and then you're also trying to deal with someone right in the room, right in the next bed, right in the waiting room, going through a drug-induced psychosis and detox, that can be extremely, scary and violent. They need help. And by removing some of that issue, we're helping them do their job better and maybe help alleviate some of the stress in our medical field. Now, I don't want to make it sound like drug addicts are inherently dangerous. We're not. I don't want to increase the stigma of drug use and addicts. That is never my intention. But it is a reality that it can and has been happening in some cases. And we need to address that. We cannot turn a blind eye to that reality. I don't think that this is a solution that is just, on paper, a perfect, hey, we want to do something that makes it look like we're doing something. This is actually something that gives opportunity and choice to those that are assessing these patients at this detox center. It doesn't mean that everyone who is picked up is going to be held for 72 hours. But if they are deemed still a danger to themselves or others, it gives those people that are assessing them some options and some choice to protect those people and the people they may come in contact with. That's it. That's what this is. It is not a perfect solution. It is not long-term rehab. It is not, going to end addiction. What it's going to do is alleviate the pressure at the ERs, alleviate some of the pressure in law enforcement. It's going to give a longer period of time for those detoxing to become into a safer state of mind while being medically monitored. And it also gives a longer opportunity for them to open up and maybe being willing to look at or listen to or receive some other resources. Because I'm telling you, when I was using, you can tell you, and I'll say this, one of the most ridiculous things I ever heard was Patrick Allard giving this presentation saying, all we need to do is get some strong messaging saying drugs are bad. Let's go back to the 80s where, this is your brain on drugs. That's all we need. And it's going to solve the addiction crisis. Most ridiculous thing I ever heard. And I'm glad I was watching it live streamed and not in the room, because I probably would have gotten kicked out of the space for laughing so hard. Addiction is far more complicated than that. And an active addict is not in the mind space of being willing to listen to that messaging. Addicts know drugs are bad. It's far more complicated than that. And I'm a strong believer that until the pain of addiction becomes greater than the pain that addiction covers up, very few of us are willing to go through the pain of recovery. Because getting clean, detoxing, is actually the easy part. It's the long-term recovery that's the hard part. We need, transitional housing, like the housing and the support and the wraparound care that organizations like the John Howard Society in Brandon is building and working towards. We need those types of facilities. We need safe consumption sites along with these detox centers, because we can't help addicts get clean in traditional housing if they're dead. We need all of these things working together, and it takes a community, and it takes open-mindedness, and it takes a willingness to try something instead of waiting for perfection. Because if we continue to talk about it, if we continue to fight about it, nothing is going to get done. And 2 years from now, we're going to be screaming, going, why isn't anything done? Well, here's our chance to do something. So why not? Because I'm telling you, and people of Point Douglas, I am looking at you right now. Without this center, nothing in your neighborhood is going to change. With this center, it might. Isn't it worth a shot? I know you don't want it there. I get it. I absolutely get it. I wish there was this perfect place that, all of these different facilities and all of these different programs could be located away from anywhere that has to do with a vulnerable person or any residential street or home, or I wish we could. That's how Alcatraz was born, or not Alcatraz, that's how Australia was born. It's not going to happen that way. And we need to meet people where they are, not just emotionally and physically, but geographically. So do I support Bill 48? Absolutely. Do I think it's perfect? No. Do I think it's going to face challenges and it really needs a lot of input from the medical, the social services, the community organizations? 100%, I believe that. Do I think it's a step in the right direction? Absolutely. But it is just a step. And I want one of these in Brandon. I want to see the legislation change so that we can start doing something instead of talking about something, because we have been talking about this for decades and people have died. People are not just, we talk about the rise in crime, we talk about the rise in drug use, we talk about, all the politicians. It's like we want to fight drug-induced crime and we want to do something and clean up our streets. Well, you know what? Nothing has worked yet. So maybe it's time we start looking at doing things differently. because we know the war on crime or the war on drugs doesn't work. You know, this is your brain on drugs. It didn't work. This is a proven fact. It actually increased the problem. You cannot arrest your way out of this. Even Wayne Balkin, who is a PCMLA to this date and former Brandon police chief, has said we are not going to arrest our way out of this. So if we know that, if the progressive conservatives know that, then you know what? It's time to start just working together and finding solutions. Because if we constantly stop progress while waiting for perfection, we are never going to get anywhere. Let's start making some progress. And maybe eventually, perfection will find us. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Bill 48 and everything else to do with addiction, recovery, and whatever else you want to talk about. I'll see you online. Thanks for joining. That's it for this episode of Real Talk, where we tackled the hardest conversations because they are the ones we need the most. I can't wait to hear your thoughts and opinions. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, or connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay real, stay engaged, and keep living your authentic truth.